This is always I feel, I don't know, something special about today. You step on campus and everything's slightly different. There's this Phil character that comes out in the middle of the night and just kind of populates all the buildings that have been donated to us by so many philanthropists. So welcome. And actually, I was going across campus here a few minutes ago, and somebody I didn't know said, "Oh, hi, Phil." So be careful as we go. This is a very, very special moment where we do remind ourselves of the importance that philanthropy has in our lives. There's so many buildings, as you can see, that are marked with all the tags, and I wish we could mark the faculty and endowed chairs. I wish we could mark the programs so we could sort of virtually see the impact that philanthropy has in our lives. We do that to say thank you and to remind ourselves of the importance of it in our lives, but also I'm so glad that so many students are here, but also to make sure that you're all going to go on your careers. You're going to all find your specific paths in your life. But I would just hope that none of us forget the impact others had on all of us in our lives and getting us to where we are and where you will be. And at some point, you're going to need to turn back, I hope, and say, let me help my fellow humans. That's what our society is all about. That's what today is all about, to remind and teach ourselves and to hear from a great philanthropist, somebody who's really made a difference, not only in his local community, not only in his family, but also at the university and well beyond. We'll hear that story in a few minutes from Mark. And thank you so much, Mark, for giving to us and particularly giving us your time today to share with us your journey. To introduce our speaker is a very special friend, Ryan Brennan. Ryan is a double threat. He's a major in finance as well as industrial engineering. He hails from Iowa City, just a few blocks away. He is the president of the Student Advancement Network here on campus and is also a named scholarship recipient. No better introducer of our key speaker today. He's a member of the Hawkinson Institute through the Tippie College of Business, as well as a business student ambassador. He's involved in MoneyThink, and probably most importantly, at least to him, this summer he will spend some time at Midwest Growth Partners, a private equity firm in the Des Moines area. So please welcome Ryan to the podium.
Yeah, no, thank you, President Harold, for the introduction. I'm excited, happy that I get to come up here and actually talk to you all for a couple minutes. But as mentioned, I'm an industrial engineering and finance student, a junior, and I'm actually from Iowa City. So I grew up around this university. I've watched it develop. And it started back when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. I would come down to campus, go to different Hawkeye football games or basketball games with my dad, had this really weird obsession with Herky. And then you fast forward 10 or 15 years, and I'm a high school student, trying to figure out where I want to go to school. And as President Harold mentioned, I was fortunate enough to actually receive a scholarship. But at the time, I wouldn't say I put a whole lot of thought about where that scholarship money actually came from, or why the university was in a position to actually be able to offer that amount of financial support to its incoming and to its current students. Obviously, though, decided that I wanted to come here to Iowa, and my first semester, I started to learn a little bit more about philanthropy through a buddy who's actually a couple years older than me. But I ended up getting involved with the group, which is called the Student Advancement Network, where I've been able to serve as a president now for the last year. To learn a little bit more about philanthropy. And for those of you who are not completely familiar with the Student Advancement Network, we're a group of 45, 50 students with two main responsibilities or objectives. So the first objective is to serve as the student ambassadors for different events that the Center for Advancement puts on throughout the year. So they put on these different events for various alumni and donors, and our group goes to these events and we sit with them, learn with them, talk with them, and learn a little bit more about kind of their passion for the university and why they chose to give and why they continue to give to the university. But in addition to that, they're also able to learn from us because we're able to go and showcase and illustrate all of the great opportunities that we have here at Iowa. So that's the first objective. So then that kind of leads into the second main objective, which is taking what we learn from these different individuals and going across campus and trying to spread that message and convey the importance of philanthropy across the student body. And I can confidently sit here and say that truly, we have an endless amount of opportunity here at Iowa, and I think all the students here in the room would completely echo that. And through my involvement with the group, you really understand and learn that one of the main reasons that we actually have these opportunities is simply due to the generosity of other people and their desire to support this campus, to support Iowa, and to support our experiences as students. So like I said, I'm a junior, been here for a couple of years, worked with the group, and I can really say that, I understand philanthropy now, and I understand philanthropy's importance. And now that I understand that, I think it's completely shaped the perspective I have here on my experience. I mean, I can honestly stand up here and say that I couldn't be more appreciative of all of these opportunities and these experiences that I've had, because I do believe that it's people all over the world that are here supporting me and supporting this university that are making all those different opportunities possible. So today, it's a great opportunity for all of us to learn a little bit more about philanthropy from Mark Kaufman, who is the founder and president and CEO of Athletico, one of the largest physical therapy franchises in the nation. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in athletic training and physical education from the University of Iowa in 1986. After earning secondary degrees from the University of Arizona and Northwestern University, Mark opened the first Athletico clinic in August of 1991. Since then, he has helped the Midwest powerhouse provider of orthopedic rehabilitation services expand to over 400 locations in 11 states, and its corporate partners include the Chicago Bears, White Sox, Bulls, and Blackhawks, the Detroit Red Wings, and the St. Louis Cardinals. Other notable partnerships include the Big Ten Conference, the United States Soccer Federation, and USA Gymnastics. Mark has shared his gifts with the University of Iowa and helped sustain the school's athletic training program through the Danny T. Foster Professorship in Athletic Training Education. He has also given back to underserved communities as an executive committee member of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metropolitan Chicago and as a board member for Operation Walk Chicago, an organization that helps homebound people with debilitating joint diseases walk again. Athletico has been named the Chicago Tribune's #1 workplace in Chicago and Advanced Magazine's best physical therapy practice in the nation. Mark met his wife, Mary Ann, at the University of Iowa as a senior, and they have 3 daughters, Fotini, Margaret, and Christina. Margaret's actually a junior here at the University of Iowa who is currently pursuing a degree in marketing. So with that, please help me welcome Mark to the stage.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. By any stretch, any test I've ever taken, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, I'm an introvert. And when Tom and Adam, where's Tom and Adam? Not right here, nice. Asked me to do this, I don't think I remembered sidewalk signs, video loops, social media, multimedia as being part of the package. And some of these photos go back a little too far. In fact, the photo that's on most of the materials came from only a few years ago. But if you have been on my family text, this is Margaret, so I'm looking at her. If you've been on my family text the last week, you'd think I'd sent in my high school yearbook photo. They were convinced no one would recognize me. So there was also when Tom said that watch a couple of videos, you'll get familiar with it, and it was here in this building, and I remember a podium, and I'm looking around like I got notes here, I might as well just throw those away. And I got the opportunity this morning to meet Ryan, and thank you for the introduction, Ryan. But I got the opportunity to go out and spend some time on the Pentecrest at 6 this morning, which probably didn't happen too many times when I was a student. But I spent most of my time chasing the dogs off the sidewalk signs. But it was a great way to start the day. It's a beautiful day. It's great to be a Hawkeye. And Cardinals won last night, the Cubs lost, so I'm all smiles today. We'll get to that later. So let's get started. I was talking about this morning, so I'm going to challenge you in the room to raise your hand, stand up. Let's start with raising your hands. If you're from a town of 1,000 people or less, stand up. If you're a town for 500 or less, Dad, you don't have to stand up. If your town, stay standing if you're from a town of 500 or less. 200. Got one in the back. 100. There we go. Yeah, all the big things. That's right. So I'm from Olds, Iowa. Olds is there's, I don't know how many people are in this room. There's more people in this room probably than are in my hometown. And that's it. And growing up there, I didn't think it was a big deal. You could walk 3 blocks and you'd be from one end of town to the other. But that's where I grew up. It was a great life. All that's good about growing up in a small town. A lot of don'ts. Don't embarrass the family. Don't screw up in school. Don't get in trouble. Keep your nose clean. Don't be lazy. You know, those types of things. But I love I found it, described it as an easy way to grow up. And you knew everybody. Everyone knew you. That's my sister and I. In front of this store that my grandfather, was a general store that my grandfather ran for 45 years. It was my parents. I have one sister. She turned, she's Pam. She turned 50 a couple weeks ago. She wanted me to mention that, so. You got the mic. My church in Swedesburg, Iowa, where my mother grew up, and that's my high school, which wasn't a Catholic school. It became a church. And now it's, when I took that photo, and now it's closed, as far as I know. They moved the school, Waco High School is where I went to high school. And they moved the school to Wayland, Iowa, which is where my dad grew up. So class of 50, I was, as I tell my daughters who were in a class of 900, I was in the top 10. And why aren't you? You know? I had... and it came up, Adam reminded me of the rules for my 3 angels. Fotini's my oldest, she's 24. She went to Northwestern for undergrad. Margaret's here. And Christina is actually coming here for a visit and meeting with the swim coach, Coach Long, on Friday, Saturday. So she's a junior in high school. So maybe we'll get one more Hawkeye out of this troop. But my rules are, you have to apply to Iowa. Rule number 1. I got 3. You cannot apply to Iowa State. That's about me. I just couldn't deal with that. And if you happen to apply to Illinois and get in, you have to turn it down immediately. So the rest is up to them. So there are no favorites with my girls, though Margaret, you know, went to Iowa, and happy she did. Turn the video off, please. So I grew up, you know, working with my dad and my parents here. They were convinced no one was going to show up, so they came. I grew up working a lot with my dad, who was a carpenter, and working weekends and listening, you know, oftentimes Saturday afternoons, listening to Iowa football games. And I had to look back to see, but I came to my first game in 1976 to watch the Hawkeyes lose to Ohio State. And I came back the next year to 2 games, you know, and I got to go to a couple basketball games, and I got to go to a wrestling meet on occasion. And I just fell in love with the Hawkeyes. You know, we didn't have pro teams. I became a St. Louis Cardinal baseball fan. That's what we do in southeast Iowa, the good part of the state. And I just felt connected to the Hawkeyes, and being a sports fan, that's about all I knew. My parents didn't go to college. I wasn't sure. About half of my class went on to some form of school out of my high school. And that second year that I got to go to come up here for a game, I went with a buddy of mine who was, his brother had walked on the football team. And it was 1977, again, something I looked up to convince myself I was right. And we went on a Friday night. He took us to Sycamore Mall, and we saw Star Wars, which big deal for a kid from that town. And then we went to Godfather's Pizza. And then we came to Slater Dormitory, where he lived, and stayed there the night, and he wasn't dressing for the next day, so he took us to the game. So I'm pretty sure I tasted beer for the first time in Slater Dormitory. Mom's over there writing notes down, probably going to try to ground me for 2 weeks or something. And you know, for a kid, 13 years old, whatever, going to an Iowa football game and coming to Iowa City and spending time on a campus, and it was just an eye-opener, and you know, arguably one of the, next to the marriage to my wife and the birth of my 3 daughters, one of the hands-down best days of my life. And so I fell in love with Iowa. My application process was, you know, a $50, I'm guessing, what I paid to apply to Iowa, signed up, and got admitted and moved into Burge in the fall of August of 1982. Went to Hillcrest in the next year in '83. Taking one step back, one of our assignments in my senior year in high school was to write a letter of inquiry, it was called. And I remember having gone up to the field house to watch a wrestling meet. A gentleman, one of the wrestlers, got injured on the mat, and a guy named Danny Foster went out, and the reason I figured out Danny's name was I had a program. And in the program, I matched the face to the name, and Dan went out on the mat and took care of this wrestler. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. You know, I've never seen what an athletic trainer, come to find out what an athletic trainer was. And Dan took care of him, and I just made a mental note. And then somehow, you know, it's just part of my history that I decided when I got that assignment, I'd write a letter to Dan Foster and ask if I could help out with the wrestling team. And by helping out, I meant, you know, sweeping the mats, keeping stats. I didn't know anything about athletic training. And of course, Dan sent me a packet, and I always joke about Dan. If you know Dan, I got like a 3-ring binder about the athletic training program. And I read through it and started kind of becoming familiar with what I thought that career was, and never heard anything more. And at some point, I just felt, you know, I wasn't qualified. That's the name of the game. And but what I didn't know at the time was they were converting the program from a 3-year to a 2-year program. At least that's my story. And I didn't hear anything. But that my second year in school, when I was at Hillcrest, I received this letter in my mailbox at Hillcrest, out of the blue. And it had the University of Iowa Athletic Department logo on the outside. And I'm sure they weren't asking me to play for the Hawkeyes. And so opened it up, and it talked about an observation program meeting that night. And on a Sunday night a couple weeks ahead. So I was interviewed for this day, and I told the story, and they put it in there, probably better than I'm telling it now. But I went to that meeting, and it was probably 50-50. You know, a Sunday night, leaving the dorm and going to a meeting you know nothing about and having no idea where it's going to take you is probably, you know, toss of the coin for a college sophomore. But I went, and Gail Wadley, who's here, was hosting that meeting, and I remember seeing John Streif and Dan Foster kind of wandering around, still working as athletic trainers do on a Sunday night, and putting all the pieces together. And so the deal was you observed, applied for the program back then, and then you got in. If you got in, you got in after your sophomore year, and it was a 2-year program for your junior and senior year. I got in the program, lucky enough to get in that program, completed the program in '86. It opened up a world to me. It opened up mentors that are here today that you know, a career path that I didn't have. I remember Dr. Albright, who's sitting in the second row, was our team physician. And I remember sitting at a talk he did, and he talked about, you know, the reason the Iowa Sports Medicine Services program is so successful is because it's based around the athletic trainers. And as a student trainer, that felt pretty good. That made me feel good. That's a career to be aspirational to. And so I was committed to the program, committed to the field. I finished in my junior year back then. You worked all men and women's sports. Your senior year, you got assigned to one sport. I worked football. I should get to the next slide. That's me, believe it or not, the same age as Margaret, so we're basically twins. And I got into the program. I traveled with the Hawkeye football team. If you know Iowa sports, 85-86 was one of the best teams ever. Went to the Rose Bowl, Big Ten champ. Absolutely nothing to do with me and my work, but I was there. Got to fly in an airplane the first time, ironically, from Cedar Rapids to Chicago to play Northwestern. It was the first time I flew in an airplane. And I think Chuck Long threw like 6 touchdowns the first half, and it was a snoozer and good game. and finished there in 1986. There's a picture of Margaret and I. My wife hasn't made the presentation yet, but she is with, and apologies for Marianne. Marianne and my youngest have an event they have to go to tonight. They're coming tomorrow, so they couldn't be here today. So I can talk about her. But Marianne asked me to go out on our first date. She took me to lunch to Bo James. And I, of course, pulled the trigger a week or two later, took her, borrowed John Streif's car, took her to the Lark in Tiffin? What is that, Tiffin? I think they burned it down. And that was our first date. And a little story that people have heard that I get a chuckle out of once. So Marianne was an RA in Slater. I was at the football team. They put us in Slater, kind of keep an eye on the team, do what we could, and which helped cover my tuition expenses when you're paying for your school. That's a big deal. And so I met Marianne in Slater dorm. I go down to pick her up for our first date, and she isn't ready. She's towel around her head, 20 girls in her room, an RA, classic RA. So I wait till everybody clears out, and I figure I'm going to, Ellen? Oh my God. It's a classmate of mine from Waco High School. So anyway, if I lie, you got me. So I pick up Marianne, I wait for everybody to clear out, and so I'm going to, I want to show her how dating Mark Kaufman is going to be. So I say, you know what, one of the pet peeves for me is when people aren't ready on time. Straight out of my mouth. And she said, this relationship isn't going to last long anyhow, so don't worry about it. So next June 19th will be 30 years of that. So that's what I got. So I finished at Iowa. To quickly run through my career, I went to the University of Arizona, which was a graduate program in athletic training, and Iowa at the time was called the model undergraduate athletic training program in the country. Dan Foster founded the program, helped sustain it. John Streif, Ed Crowley, Dr. Albright built what I would call one of the best athletic training programs undergraduate in the country. I looked around at a lot of schools and was lucky enough to get into the U of A and work with the Wildcats for 2 years. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I'm here, I think, is because several years after I finished there, and we got together as alumnus, and we were proud of our work at the University of Arizona and collegial with our classmates and so forth. But I get a notice that the program had been disbanded. They closed the program down. It just wasn't big enough and being supported enough to do that. And I remember thinking, God, I'd never want to see that happen at Iowa. It's just too important to me. Little did I know, what was to come, but it's something that certainly stuck in my head. I went to Northwestern for physical therapy school. I took a job in a place called, that's Abe, a place called Lincoln Park Physical Therapy for 2 years. I started an outreach athletic training program because I wanted to stay involved with athletes, and I wasn't doing that as a physical therapist. And because I'd only worked at the Division I level, I thought that I was a college athletic trainer. I didn't come to appreciate that I would really enjoy high school athletic training, which I started that program, and it was just one of the best experiences of my life. I became the first athletic trainer at about 3 high schools in downtown Chicago because they didn't have an athletic trainer. And I just soon figured out that I just love working with athletes and being around them. So then I got the idea, because the guys I was working with were kind of having a divorce. They weren't getting along too well, and I was kind of getting tired of that noise. And I thought, well, I don't have kids. My wife has a job. I could probably get another job if I fail at this. Why don't I call my parents, borrow some money from them, borrow some money from my in-laws, borrow some money from my college roommate. I remember Mom, to her credit, said, Larry, what are we going to do with the money? We're not going to spend it, so let's just give it to them. And, there was a lot of kids from Olds, Iowa opening businesses in Chicago at the time, so I don't know what they were so worried about. But they gave me some money. We got started. I opened the first clinic in '91, and that was the goal. I wanted to open one clinic. I hired a receptionist, and never an ambition to open a second clinic. You could, from my background, to keep it one clinic open would have been an achievement. And but we did that, and we opened our second clinic in '94. I've hired a number of Hawkeyes over the years. I had 3 roommates. We used to live at Ralston Creek over there on Gilbert. They all 3 work with me now, and have worked with me for several years. But we opened our second clinic in '94. By the end of the decade, we had 10. By the end of 2010, we had about 50 clinics. By the end of 2014, what was happening was I saw that a number of companies, even in Chicago, were growing at a faster pace than us, and it, got to say the right words, it upset me. And because I knew we were competing, we had a lot of things going for us that others weren't doing. We had a strong athletic training outreach program, and yet companies were growing faster than we were. And I was a little more risk adverse. I wanted to grow it. I didn't quite want to grow it like that, but I wanted to grow. And so in 2014, we took on a partner, did a leverage buyout, and I sold part of the business to a firm out of New York called Harvest Partners. We took on a financial partner that we could go out and do an acquisition. I had this great idea. I had companies in St. Louis, Indianapolis, Wisconsin, Michigan, that were small in size, 10, 15 clinics that I thought, we could roll these up. I know the people that are running them. Our partners with Harvest had the idea that, hey, there's this company in Chicago called Accelerated, and a good physical therapy company. They're in your backyard. You've been competing well against them for several years. They are in the markets you are not in and where you want to go. What about doing that? Well, understand, if you haven't figured out, we've grown organically, for 20-some years and had a very tight culture, 100 clinics, 1,500 employees. So the next likely business step that you would probably not hear at Tippy or anywhere else was to acquire a company of 2,500 employees and 246 clinics, but that's what we did. So we acquired Accelerated in December of 2014. It was now that it's past me, wonderful experience. They had about 7 or 8 different cultures going. They had good partners, but they had never integrated the group. And that was a little bit more of a challenge than I thought it would be. But we did that in 2+ years. We took on a recapitalization project with BDT Partners out of Chicago, a great firm that I'm really thrilled to be with. And I could talk all day about their charitable giving efforts. But we did that in December of 2016. We've done 3 smaller acquisitions since then. By that's 12, 15, 1 clinic, smaller acquisitions, and we've opened about 30 to 40 sites the last couple of years, and we're on that trajectory. Honestly, I don't know where that will take us, but I know we are going to continue to grow, and that we have some big plans for the years to come. And this is where we're located in the blue states now. They had 1 clinic in Arizona, Accelerated did. We now have 6. We've expanded down there. I call it the kind of Big Ten footprint that we have, but we just acquired groups in Nebraska and a bigger group in St. Louis, and there's a lot of opportunity in that world. But that's Athletico. I bring it to you because it's allowed me to be exposed to charitable giving. It's certainly provided some financial opportunities for me to resource some things that are important to me. But more importantly, it's introduced me to philanthropy and brought it into my life. And the reason that I connect the dots there is I had a chance to get involved a lot earlier than that. It was the late 90s, and there was a few board members at Big Brothers Big Sisters that came to me and they said, you should be part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters board. And many of you know Big Brothers Big Sisters, we match bigs, mentors, with littles, usually children, single-parent homes, underprivileged, got some issues. And they came to me, and I'm guessing it was the late 90s, but I had this business that was growing. I was busy. I had three young daughters. I made up the story that I just didn't have the time. Didn't have the time to do it. It was my choice. I got to keep focused on this business. I don't know what I'm doing with that. I'm trying to grow it, figure all that out. And so I said no. And a few years later, these same people, CEO of a health company, a guy that's one of my closest friends, and a lawyer who was a patient of mine, came back to me, same guys, and said, we're still committed. You should be part of this Big Brothers Big Sisters board. And I said, you know what? I still have this business I don't know what I'm doing with. I still got 3 daughters. I'm still married to this lovely Greek wife. I just, But I realized that I just made up the same excuse that I'd made up years before that. And so I decided that let's pull the trigger here, let's see what we can do. And I joined the board of Big Brothers, and that was around 2003. And so it became an experience for me, kind of a window into philanthropy that I didn't, they had at the time probably, as they call in the charitable giving world, a give-get, meaning you pay, I think the number was you had to commit $500 of your own earnings and you had to raise $10,000 or something like that, which sounds like a lot. And it's something I've learned, and I'm sure it's a lot of money. It sounds like a lot of money to all of us. But that was the gig, and I thought, wow, can I raise $10,000? It was just a new skill. I didn't have a lot of comfort going out and asking other people for money, but it was something that you learn how to do if you're really committed to support, and you care and you have passion around something you believe in. And when you see, like I did with Big Brothers Big Sisters, or you would see if you're committed to the University of Iowa or anything else you have passion around, you see the results from the dollars you commit or your energy you give. And for kids, it's easy. We're graduating kids from high schools. We were back in 2003, and not due to me, due to the board and the work that the entire team and the infrastructure of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Metropolitan Chicago does. I think we had 300 or 400 kids we were matching back then, and our budget was probably $300,000 or $400,000. Now we're pushing towards $3 million, and we support about 2,000. We're gunning towards 2,000. We have an eye on 5,000. 5 and 5 is our goal, to get 5,000 matches. We had an interesting story once, about 2 years at the board meeting when I was still the board chair, and I was excited because we had a group come in, and it was for underprivileged kids of single-parent homes where the other parent was incarcerated. And of course that makes sense. Cook County, there's some people that are incarcerated. I thought, oh my God, this is a great opportunity. We could really help support this. Well, they came in, and the last slide they presented was there's 10,000 kids that need this. And we were at, 1,000. We didn't have the money. We couldn't do that. And it was like a punch in the gut. And simply because we didn't have the funding, we didn't have the infrastructure to support something like that, something I was really excited about, and then walk away from that meeting being very disappointed, taught me about the need for this particular cause, but there's so many needs out there that you can find. My challenge to you would be, you don't have to look hard to find something you can get your arms around or get engaged with. So there's my wife, the one, that lovely girl standing beside me. So that became my why, and started asking. And I started asking, what else am I committed to? And then I circled back to the University of Iowa. And I remember talking to Albright, Dr. Albright and Foster around the athletic training program, because what I mentioned what happened at the Arizona program, and said, how can we do something that supports that? And I'm pretty sure it wasn't Foster, because he wouldn't come out with this, but I think Dr. Albright said, you know what, if we do something for the professorship, the lead person in the program, they can't take the program away. So that's what became the Danny Foster Professorship. And I'm very proud of that. I'm lucky to have mentors like Foster, Streif, Crowley, Albright. See Dr. Wolf now. We're working on some other ideas with the program. But that's meant a lot to me, and there's more we can do and more we've done there, and we look forward to do. So that's the why. There's some throwback shots there. I had to stick the Cardinals in there. We had an event for sports medicine at the National Committee, National Convention down in St. Louis a few years ago. But the reason for Iowa for me was the help they gave me in school. I got a partial scholarship. I got help for room and board my senior year. I got mentorship, mentors that I still keep in my life, lifelong mentors. I got an education, a career path. I have, driving into Iowa City last night, the memories for a guy that doesn't like to admit it, and realized it pretty quickly when I was standing next to young Ryan getting my photo taken. I kind of think like I look the same as I did, But I've been gone 32 years now. And but coming in, the memories, walking around campus this morning, being with Margaret when I've been with Margaret, going to games, just come flooding back. Most of them I won't talk about because my mother's here, but there's most of them, all of them are good. And it's just, for me, why Iowa and why I'm committed to Iowa and why I'd like to think we're just getting warmed up for what we can do here is really important to me. There's a lot of causes I've supported, but it's put me on a path, and it's given me so much, like I think philanthropy does. You'll hear it a lot. The more you give back. You get that multiple back in return. And I'm sure many of you are part of that, but it's been just a great experience. The guy up in the right, because he's a Cyclone, this guy he lost a bet to me, and so my daughters got to decorate him in black and gold. So, and I made him read Niall Kinnick's speech on the bus to the Iowa-Illinois game. Then we sang the fight song. So those are the kind of things you get to do when you hang around Cyclones. So for today, these are some of the things that I'm involved with. I kind of look at it, and I'll talk in a minute about uncovering your passion or what gives you energy. These are some of the things that I really am committed to and I've gotten involved with. There's others. It becomes kind of the question for me on active versus passive commitment. I'll write checks for different events if it's a person I know or a colleague or a friend that I value your judgment. If I'm going to commit anything of significance, I'm going to do my due diligence on it and understand, is this something that really means something to me, that I want to spend my active involvement, meaning I'm going to spend my time around this. Writing a check's easy, but do I really want to spend time with this and try to come up with something that really could benefit the organization or drive it forward? And that's kind of how I look at philanthropy and what I do and what we do as a family and what Athletico does. Athletico's been a huge driver. I have to make those decisions around, is this a company initiative, something like the Arthritis Foundation that fits in our wheelhouse for physical therapy and healthcare? Or is it something like Big Brothers Big Sisters, which, that's a personal thing that doesn't really connect to physical therapy. I can't draw the line, and that's something I want to support myself. But it's been a great ride for me and a great awakening in a lot of ways, and it's just something that I'm very proud of, and I'm proud of the work Athletico and our charitable giving team do. So these are my suggestions, and take them for what they're worth, but it may, if it wakes up a couple people and you get started on your path, and maybe you already are on your charitable giving philanthropy path, now that's fantastic. You did a lot better than I did. But getting to know yourself, spending time with yourself. As I said, I'm an introvert. I recharge myself by being alone and thinking about things. And I think it's helpful to really get through with what is meaningful to you. Take accountability. That's a big one. That's not only a core value for Athletico, but it's been important in my work. And by taking accountability, it's my story of, I'm too busy, I have a choice with what to do with my time. I can find the time to spend working with Dan and Dr. Albright on the program, or making a phone call, or I can choose not to. But don't blame, my sweet little angels, or my wife, or my work, or blah, 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 whatever you want to blame. Own it and decide, I'm ready to get engaged with something, or I'm not. I've got finals week in 2 weeks. Maybe it's not the time to get on the charitable giving board, but maybe it's sometime after that you might find something you're interested in. Identify mentors and keep them close. I've been blessed by many, many great mentors in my life, some of which are here today, and some of those are in the photo. People that, not only showed me how to do things the right way, taught me how to do things the right way. If you're spending time with Streef, you're going to hear a lot of questions about how you do things, and I appreciate that. That has always resonated with me to how I get better. And if I talk to our facility managers and our management team about leaders usually think about a couple things. They think about things are going to get better and can get better, and they also consider that they can drive things and make them better. But if they're really smart leaders, they're going to leverage people around them. The one like I was, when I opened my first clinic, I used to think I had to learn everything. I had to be an accountant. I had to be a real estate expert. I had to be a lawyer. Good luck with that. Hire those people. Find them. Bring them into your world. Bring them into your circle. And keep them around. Define what gives you energy and what drains you. I can only point to the students in the room. You probably have subjects you're getting ready to take exams for that you really are excited to study for, and there's probably a couple that you always seem to put off and study. They're the last ones you get to, or the struggle, or the energy draining subjects. We all had them. I had mine. I won't tell them with some of these guys around, but find out, identify what gives you energy. What when you're in the zone, when you feel that flow, or you just love what you're doing. What are you doing? What are you doing during that time? And it might help you identify some things you want to get involved with. It'll help you understand and discover your passions. Showing gratitude and appreciation. You do that on a daily basis, you're on your way. There's so many things that I have an opportunity to show gratitude and appreciation. I don't do it enough. I try to do it 5 times a day. I don't do it to my parents enough. I certainly don't do it to my sister enough. She's sitting there, yeah. My daughters, my family, the people I get to work with, my mentors. But I've had a really blessed life, and I know we all have. And there's opportunities every day to show appreciation and gratitude, and we should keep that in mind. Consider that time is your most valuable asset. Writing checks and contributing, raising money for organizations is a big deal. You'll find out pretty quickly you only have so much time. And I think the head at Big Brothers, if I forget the number now that I even bring up the story, I think it's 168. If you take 24 hours a day times 7, I think that's 160. That's how many hours are in each week. And he used to challenge us to give 1 hour a week to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And you'll find out pretty quickly you only have so much time. Back to the active and passive contributions you make, you'll be pretty judgmental about what organizations and interests you want to spend your time with. How big of a game you want to play? One of my mentors in Chicago is always asking me this question. I mean, talking about Athletico typically, and when I get nervous or fearful around an acquisition or what we're about ready to embark on, like, how big a game you want to play? Do you want to stop? And I'm like, ultimately, no. But it's a good question. I think it's a good question to ask yourself. And finally, do something. Taking a step is ultimately the thing you want to challenge. I think you want to challenge yourself to do. I waited way too long. I made up all the excuses I could make up about why I was too busy or shouldn't get involved with philanthropy, and what more I could find myself doing around work or trying to be a husband or a father, and found ways to distract myself away from it. But it was something that ultimately became a decision point for me that I took that step and never looked back. It's been just a wonderful experience. I look forward to what I may or may not do with some of the organizations. I certainly look forward to what I can do and support here because of the people in this room and the university itself. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, but before that, I just want to really appreciate you all for coming, the time you're spending here with me, and being with me today. One person smarter than me said something about, in the end, while we have our memories, and you guys have made a special one for me today, so thank you very much. Any questions?
Mr. Kauffman, I'd like to thank you for coming and presenting today. I really admire what you've done at Athletico and in philanthropy. My question is, can you explain any specific traits or skills that you look for in potential employees to represent Athletico, specifically physical therapy?
Yeah. So the question was, are there skills, characteristics, traits that we look for when we're hiring physical therapists, athletic trainers? That's pretty occupational therapists. One of the it's not a secret. We do career fairs and we bring them in, and one of the students that come in, one of the first things they experience at the career fair is I'm sitting in what we call our boardroom, and they just show up, and then there I am, and I get to interact with them, which is a great way to, you get to self-identify the kids. They're all kids to me, but the personalities they have. And it's not really a fair thing because, again, I'm an introvert. I'm not going to be the one that's just, jumping across the table to shake someone's hand, or I'm going to be more of a wallflower. But you start to understand their commitment and their ability to smile. What I always think about is how I would place them in front of a patient. We talk about the interface between the patient and the clinician as being one of the key elements of the service we deliver. And does that therapist have the ability to stay present? Meaning the patient understands that they are wholly and completely there for them. We all drift. Some of you are, I'm certain, drifting now, but listening to me for a few minutes. But the key skill is to be able to shift back and being present. And so we talk a lot about that. Is not only are they going to be able to instill confidence in a patient, do they have the communication skills? Do they have a warm smile? We're in the customer service healthcare business, and if you can't instill confidence and you don't have what I consider a passion for healthcare and helping people, there's a lot of other areas in physical therapy, research and things, teaching that maybe don't require that interface so much, but it's what we really look for. And kind of we evaluate people. We have questions related to our 4 core values, and that's patient service that I talked about, continuous improvement, accountability, that they're going to own what's going on in their life. If through the conversation they start, blaming their parents why they didn't finish school with a 4.0, or teachers were terrible, or their roommate was a knucklehead, or whatever it was, that's going to be a problem. And then teamwork. So those are our 4 core values: teamwork, continuous improvement, accountability, and patient service being number 1. We have questions built around those that we ask the students, and that's how we start our process. Yes?
How would you say that
As a philanthropist? Okay, I'm going to tell a story that I don't know why it came to me. But, I saw in small communities, people helping each other, right? I mean, something would happen, everybody's in the fields right now, and people, if the farmer gets sick or fell on hard times, people come together. This isn't really a connected story, but it's one that I don't know why it popped into my mind. My mother made me take violin lessons for like 3 years. I'm the last thing from a violinist. And I think when I finally quit, and I finally convinced her I need to quit, I was like in 3rd grade, she baked a pie for the teacher. She might argue with me, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And I kept thinking, why would you bring a pie to the teacher? I don't know, you just do things like that, little things, right? But growing up in a small town, you saw people coming together around the church, the community centers, crises. Everyone, right or wrong, knew each other's business. But you always had this, it was a draw, I guess, that you got to do something, The way I describe growing up in a small town is either you're looked at as the guy or gal that works hard, or you're lazy. You got 2 options, and I didn't want to be the person who was lazy. And when you're not lazy, you got a mind that's always thinking about what more you can do and how you can help and do, And so I think that's just kind of the survival tactics for the small town. And I have great value for the small town upbringing. I love when I'm meeting potential employees or fellow colleagues at Athletico about where they're from, and I hear the small town, so I always ask how small, and I hear 15,000. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, come on, seriously. But anyway, I hope I answered your question. Anybody else? Yes.
What do you hope your legacy is here at the University of Iowa?
Honestly, never thought about that. Legacy at the University of Iowa. Something committed to the athletic training program is obviously where it starts. I've said it in public before. I love the University of Iowa's athletic training program. I love the athletic department. I love the University of Iowa. I love Iowa City, and it's kind of in that order. And so I'm very proud to be a former member of the program. I'm a Hawkeye. People usually meet me, they figure out I'm from Iowa and I'm a Hawkeye, and within the first 30 seconds. And I'm very proud of that, to a fault at times, I think. But I don't have many friends. But, someone that helped someone that helped the program in the right ways. You know, I think Iowa's programs around doing things the right ways. Iowa's athletic training, sports medicine services, doing it for the benefit of the athlete, keeping the athlete out on the field in the right way. And so I'm just proud of that. Yes?
How have the connections that you've maintained at the University of Iowa contributed to yours and Athletico's personal success? And then in that same realm, what advice do you have for students who are soon to pursue professional careers?
So Iowa, I mean, it goes back to the mentors. When I could tell, we could talk the rest of the day about the experiences I had with Ed and Dan and John and Dr. Albright, just working with them and seeing it's kind of that, and Gail and Mike, don't let me forget anyone. It's kind of that, there's a right way and the wrong way and the Iowa way. You can do things the right way and do a good job, but there's another, you can take it to another level. We talk about, and I've taken that with Athletico, are we going to exceed a customer or a patient's expectations? Are we going to meet them or are we going to exceed them? And are we going to turn an exceeding experience, someone that we have exceeded their expectations, into a raving fan? Somebody that's going to talk about Athletico. And then we talk about, can we turn them into an evangelist? Somebody that's going to go out and say, you know what, if you need physical therapy, you got to come to Athletico. And we challenge each of our sites. You can be Athletico and you can do your best, but are you the best clinical provider in your community? If you're not, what are you doing about it? So always setting the standard high, I think, is something I learned at Iowa. And the expectations, they were always about continuous improvement and figuring out ways to do better. Dan tinkering with the program, making our program challenging us as students in a lot of ways, I thought was always important to the success of the program. But working in the athletic training settings, getting an opportunity to work with the physicians, just opened up a world to us as students that really meant something to me in my career path, and a lot of what I think we've taken and been successful with at Athletico. When you talk about career path, ask questions. The ears, born with 2 ears and 1 mouth. There's a lot of questions, and sitting, listening, and learning, finding mentors, I think, and those mentors, faculty members, people, associates, people you admire, bring them into your world. I love being a mentor. I love being asked questions that I can provide an answer to, or keep somebody from making the mistakes I made. And I think that is, being willing to be vulnerable enough to admit you don't know something and leverage those around you, I think would be one of the key assets or characteristics you can develop in yourself.
All right, let's give Mark another round of applause. Yeah, well, thank you again, Mark. I know I certainly speak on behalf of everyone in this room when I say that, we truly appreciate you taking the time to come out here and share your story and help us learn a little bit more about philanthropy. But with that, let's go enjoy Phil's Day. Like Mark said, we were out here at 6 a.m. in the cold, putting up all this Phil's Day here marketing materials. So go take note of it. Go take a picture or something with the Phil letters out on the front lawn. And then students also, if you wouldn't mind stopping by the table right outside the door to sign a postcard. We're going to be sending them out to some different donors. But thank you again for everyone for attending the talk, and go Hawks.